Life is messy and unpredictable.
Being able to find joy in the weeds of life is so important. I'm Beth.
And I'm Kim, and we are so glad you've joined us as we figure out how to hold joy in one hand and struggle in the other.
Welcome to Joy in the Weeds.
And welcome
Here we
to
are.
Joy. We're going to get weedy today, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Oh, yes, we are.
We are indeed. Yeah, we had to pivot really quick because we had another interview planned, and that sadly fell apart, and actually for sad reasons. But
Yeah.
so in a quick conversation this morning, you suggested 3 things, and I liked the middle one, so let's go.
The messiest of them.
Yeah,
I might say so.
That is true. It is the messiest one.
So compliments and criticism.
Yes.
Is which is like joy in weeds.
Yes, actually, yeah.
So the reason I thought maybe we should attempt to talk about this was this week. I got a message that I needed to check out, and we had gotten our first negative review.
So let's just stop right there. Okay. How many episodes in are we?
A lot. I don't know.
Yeah. And we're on season 3.
Right.
Yeah, and we got our first negative one. So that's
I know.
kind of cool. Like,
it's about time.
And I'm like, well, it is about time. I mean, somebody's going to criticize somewhere.
Yes, and it's really fascinating to me because we're not like famous by any stretch of the imagination, and we I put some things out on social media, and I have a TikTok channel, et cetera, but not enough that anyone's going to know or care to give a negative review. But you often hear about people that, are and put a lot of content out there, and you hear them talking about getting negative reviews and how sometimes it's just overwhelming. When you're getting lots, and then we hear about bullying online and all the things that can happen, and anyway, I have always I tend to think, okay, I'm happy to read anything,
Right.
and then move on and take what I need to learn from it, because sometimes I think you might learn something from something that's said. Other times you just understand better the people that are listening.
Right. Yeah,
And
that's
even
true.
that's a positive thing. And so I really, so I found out about this one of the days I was watching Charlie. And so I'm sitting there, and I read it, and then I had like a whole day to ponder it, because she was having a rough day. She was having a really rough day. And so I was doing a lot of just holding Charlie, and she was
Aw.
these little cat naps. And anyway, it was kind of, so I was spending lots of time just sitting there with a sleeping baby in my arms and thinking about it. And I found myself shockingly more disturbed by it than I ever dreamed I would be.
Really?
And then that really bothered me, that it
Oh,
bothered me. Like I was
can't give
bothered.
yourself a break.
I was bothered that I was bothered. And
That's hilarious.
so then I was trying to deconstruct it, right? And kind of
Okay.
really look at, what it was said, what was saying, et cetera, et cetera. And it came to the conclusion none of that mattered. And then as I decided to take a moment and just, pray about it. And that sounds kind of, but I just decided to pray about it. And my prayer was just simply, all right, God, like, first of all, my heart, that both Kim and I are just trying to be open and vulnerable, right? And share. And sometimes that is more eloquent and profound, and sometimes it's more not eloquent and profound, but it's just sharing, right? It's sharing our heart. And so, anyway, so I'm just kind of talking to God about it, which is one of the ways that I pray. And quite literally, I'm praying about it and my phone dings and I have a text from someone. And the text is, "Thank you so much for the most recent episode."
Oh, that's hilarious.
Weeds. I always like something about that they're also like a bit extra or whatever, and that they
Oh.
just anyway, they really appreciate it, something like that. It was very simple. And I have to tell you, like that was um it was just a real kind of wink and nod from God that he's, it's okay. Like it's okay. And then from then on, I've been able to much more in a very different way look at the fact that we have a criticism. Because you're
So
right, it's in some ways it's kind of cool, and in other ways it's
so what I absolutely love about what I just witnessed was how quickly we glossed over the weeds and we went right to the joy. So
that is what I do, Kim, and I
it
do
is
it very well. I am a master at it. This is why we're so good together.
However, if we're going to help people out when
Right.
they have
No,
criticism
absolutely.
coming, like I'm very curious um as to that the being bothered by it and then the being bothered by being bothered by it. Like because when you read it to me, I was immediately like I got that little defensive oh basically in my head was like, "Oh, get over yourself." That's like, "Please." We're talking about real life, please. So I mean, the immediate reaction for me was
Right.
defensiveness.
Yeah. And where does that defensiveness come from? Like, what are you just
Well,
I
I
would
mean,
I
I
would
think it's
say my
normal.
initial reaction was also defensiveness, like the
Right,
very first one.
right.
Um, I do know that we are doing this and we are sponsored by the Carolina Conference and they edit it and it is
Yeah.
put out by the Carolina Conference. And so I feel a different sense of responsibility as well to make sure that we are being if it was just you and I and we were we were doing all this and not sponsored by them and we were
Yeah.
editing it and putting it out on our own, I think it would be a little bit different, but I think that adds a different level of um, wanting not only to do it well, what we do, but
Mhm.
I don't to do it well in a way that is also pleasing to God. And so we take that seriously. So when it's something that's a little less serious and a little more whatever, then
Real life.
real life, thank you. That's a good way of putting it. It makes me question it, right? Like if
Yeah.
this is about, and so that's interesting to me. Um that there was that element because that definitely played
Yeah.
in. Like, I instantly pretty quickly started thinking about, you know, um, what administration or other people might
Oh,
think.
yeah,
Does
yeah,
that
yeah,
make
yeah,
sense?
yeah.
And so,
Yeah. Let's
and
just
that played a thing.
if I was listening to this, I would be
Yes,
extremely irritated with us
because you didn't know what to
because I
say.
have no idea. Now, we can either read it, which is fine, or we can just let people know what it is, um, the basic gist of it. We're
I'll just
silent.
read
We
it.
can't be silent on
I
a
know
podcast.
silence doesn't work on a podcast. I'll just read it. It was in reference to the one on fashion.
Okay.
And it just said, "Watch this podcast for the first time. What a waste of time. This is another proof of how many of us are losing our way and our focus in these last days. So, so sad."
Yeah. Yeah. So the immediate, like, I mean, even you reading it again, I could
Yeah.
feel that
Yeah.
sharpness right in the center of my chest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I think, for some reason, I got to reach over here. So sorry. For some reason, I just,
No, you're fine. I can see.
my screen just went completely black.
Can
Okay,
you see us again? Has it come
I
back?
can see us again. I don't know what that was. That
Well,
was
it's
really
back.
weird. Okay.
We see you fine.
I apologize for my reaction.
No, you're
I have an
fine.
old computer. Anyway, so immediately, so that there's that sharpness in my chest, like that's the defensiveness.
Mhm,
So there,
mhm, mhm,
and defensiveness, I'm going to be a therapist here for a minute. Okay. Comes from the filter of shame.
mm,
So
mhm,
all of us have shame. And
mhm.
so when we are criticized, that turns into judgment because we have a filter of shame. So we feel judged, we feel condemned, and a natural response is to defend against that because we don't like the feeling of shame that that brings us. So we
Right.
want to offload that because it doesn't feel good. We want to offload it. And so then a lot of times, defensiveness is a counterattack.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
that's the initial reaction. Perfectly normal. Everybody does it.
mhm.
Not good
And
for relationships in general. When you're in a close relationship, like this person, whatever. Um, and in a close relationship, that defensiveness is very damaging. So we're not talking about that today.
no.
However, that is an important piece to put out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're thinking.
So,
So
what?
you're thinking.
Well, you were asking about the fact that I was bothered
Yes,
and
so
then
I want
bothered
so
by being
after
bothered.
defensiveness, what happened after that?
Yeah, I pretty quickly went to being bothered that it bothered me. Like, when as soon as I realized that it
Okay,
was uncomfortable.
okay. 'Cause
I know what you're
we
thinking, so I
Enneagram 7s
can't
don't
stop
like
laughing.
to be uncomfortable. I love you.
I kept going back to all the things I have thought, which is
Oh,
it won't like those kind of things won't bother me, right? It's not that big a deal. Like, it's just somebody's experience and opinion to what we said. I don't need to
but
v-
you're right in all those things, you're logicking your way out of your feelings. Were you able to validate
not
that
even logically getting myself out of the feelings. I was just irritated that all
oh,
the things I thought I would feel, I was not feeling, and that it was bothering me more than I thought it would. And
oh.
so instead of doing that, I was just irritated because I think that um, I have seen the ability to handle it and to put it in its correct category and
So
not to no, I know what you're thinking.
no,
But I
you
have to
maybe.
but there yeah, maybe, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. But
It's
but
okay.
there
I just got defensive. Like, literally, I just did.
rightly so, I shouldn't say that. But
Okay.
it genuinely, I have really valued the ability to handle criticism, to look at it logically,
Yeah.
and to then, decide if there's something I need to do about it, and if not,
Mhm.
move on and not attack and not,
So what I find
all those things.
interesting
Yes.
you can't take this is gonna be more therapeutic than we thought. Okay, so the first initial reaction is shame
Right.
from the person, and then you shamed yourself.
Yep. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and
So
we
you
do that. We that is a very that is again, a thing that we do. We don't like how we feel, and then we judge ourselves for how we feel about things, and then it's a double shaming, rather than taking care of the part of us that feels shamed because that's a very wounded part of us.
Mhm.
that needs to be taken care of rather than further shamed. Now, I'm not saying that to shame you. I'm just
No,
pointing out that that's our process.
absolutely. And so as I sat on the couch,
Holding your sweet baby.
holding my sweet baby, thinking about this, I did it out of me from shaming myself for feeling whatever,
Defensive.
defensive, hurt,
Hurt.
um, questioning. I started then like picking it apart. Like, why? Beth, and asking myself questions and going through this thing. And,
Mhm.
some of it was circles for a little bit.
Mhm.
Had a lot of time, too much time. Um,
Mm.
and I came to the realization that
Mhm.
it hit a couple things, like the
Mhm.
core, a couple things,
Mhm.
and which usually criticism that bothers us does, if
Mhm.
not all criticism,
Exactly.
but especially the ones that,
Exactly.
that sting a bit,
Yeah.
or a lot,
Yeah.
are ones that touch at cores that, like you
Yeah.
said, are things that we need to work on. And, um, yeah, so for me on this one, it was 2 things. I think all of us at moments have sort of, imposter, what is it called? Imposter
Imposter
syndrome or
syndrome?
whatever. Yeah,
Mm.
and just saying it was a waste of time,
Mhm.
that was needling at that, like there's no value in it, in what we're
Mhm.
doing, right? And
Mhm. Ouch. Yeah.
that it is just that there isn't value in what we're doing. And
Right.
then secondly, um, losing our focus in these last days, so sad, i in essence, is saying, to me anyway,
Mhm.
that we are not as religious or spiritual as we
Mhm.
should be,
As we should.
right? And there's no question. I don't
Mhm.
care what church you grow up in or
Right.
what
Yeah.
just in this world,
Yep.
that is an easy message to get across. And
Yeah.
it's an easy message for our kids to pick up on. It's an easy message for us to pick up on. And it is something that I think a lot of people um have either it's something you struggle with, or it's something you just accept and then ignore that part of your life,
Mhm.
right? In other words, I'm not good enough, or I'm not religious enough, that so forget it, like then I have
Mhm.
no part in it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Or we struggle with it sometimes. I mean, I think that's a normal kind of um, it maybe it's not, but that's how I perceive it to be kind of a normal thing. So
Mhm.
those were 2 things, but those are 2 things in this that are at the core really, really important to me.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and I think most people that listen to this podcast or that just know me know, my relationship with Jesus Christ, and my relationship even with the church, and my relationship, I mean, my whole life has been about ministry and service. Like that at the core is probably, the most important thing to me, right?
Mhm.
And so that was basically saying, so you've lost your way.
Mm. Ow.
And
Wow.
that's not comfortable.
No, sure's not. Holy cow.
um
Besides, sorry, I'm getting defensive again, wanting to defend you. It's like
nah,
there's this person doesn't even know that. Like
yeah.
they don't have they don't know you.
Well, and interestingly, the my initial reaction was, you lit like you listen to the one on fashion, and
And it says fashion.
it
It's
says
like,
fashion,
go find one on the Sabbath. Listen to
and
that one.
yes, and we do have all these others that we've done that were just so much more, Anyway, focus on other things. But it doesn't but then I came there, it doesn't really matter. Uh, and that well, it does matter, but boy, I'm talking in circles. I'm so sorry, people.
That's okay. No, because this isn't it. This is again, this is emotional for us. Like this hits emotion,
Yeah,
and that's perfectly normal. And when that's happening, it's messy.
this is
We are in the middle of weeds right now, and we're navigating our way in them.
and
So this is what it's like.
yeah, we're just letting you see the process,
Yes.
quite literally.
Exactly, letting you because we're gonna just let our listeners know that we started this conversation before we
Mhm.
started recording, and I said, "Let's stop
Yeah.
and let's have the conversation so it can be a messy one
Yeah. Well,
and not a
welcome.
polished one."
So, shoot, I was gonna say something.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Um,
You were saying
oh,
it
it
doesn't
was
matter, and
about
then you said it does matter.
because it's about fashion.
Yeah.
It also that part was also, one of the other issues. And I don't know how much we touched on this when because I honestly, I couldn't remember.
Right.
And I realized my thinking about I almost went back to listen to it again, and then I was like, "Why would you listen to it?"
Yeah, because
Because
one
you're
person
trying to be
criticized.
defensive and you're
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to, you know, make it anyway. And I decided that's not the point. Like I'm
right,
not going to argue with this person.
right,
And you know, their experience is what their experience is, and
right.
and so, but what I did realize in that was actually the reason why I wanted to talk about fashion
Mhm.
because there is a this reaction is a normal reaction
Mm,
often inside the church.
exactly.
So to think about fashion or to, you know, put too much emphasis on fashion, like
Mhm.
that whole thing, it gets sticky and we frankly just shame one another for even thinking about
Right,
it. And there are a lot of and
right.
yet it's interesting, we shame it if it's wanting to be, you know, fashionable or too pretty or, because then that becomes about self-glorification. I mean, we can, you've heard all the things. And so you can go down that path. And yet it's interesting to me that, focusing on it in a good way, and I do that in air quotes, you know, in a way where people are there is a way to talk about it that is acceptable, and it's a way to and focus on it that is acceptable, which is the idea that, to talk about things like modesty and simplicity and
Mhm.
practicality, and they're still focusing on it, right? It's just and as someone where all things beautiful,
Yeah,
yards,
yeah,
flowers, the
yeah.
sky, all of God's glorious creation, food. I was just thinking last night, food is one of the most beautiful things that he ever created. And,
For
all
you.
yes, for me. And
Not for me.
I don't mean just eating. I'm
No,
saying literally to
the
look
beautiful
at it.
yes,
It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
so
Just
interesting and it's
like
so
a
colorful
strawberry,
and
it's
it's so
gorgeous, yeah.
textural and
Mhm, mhm.
different shapes, and it's just so fascinating to me. And so for someone who I'll say who's an artist, right?
Yeah,
The idea of how I clothe myself also comes into play.
yeah,
And yet growing, in this world, this sort of where you find yourself in this battle between good and evil, where people label good and evil,
mhm,
things that really aren't good and evil,
mhm.
right? It has always been a thing that has caused me some angst.
Yeah,
And this, so that's why I wanted us to talk about it and why
yeah,
I wanted to be able to, have that. And so then this was just sort of the, see, yeah.
yeah, it's almost like this person was proving her point. Like, we talked about fashion because it's something that we need to just let it go. If you wanna dress simply and practically, fine. If
Oh,
you wanna
100%.
dress with a little extra bling, fine. Let's leave people alone, and it's okay. Whatever they wanna do is okay. So this thing back at was we were actually doing that podcast to counter
Yeah.
the criticism about fashion. Now, the last days thing, whatever. Um, but that first thing, that it's a waste of time, that we shouldn't be focusing on it, da 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 da. That's what we were actually countering that. That's why we did that podcast.
Right. Yeah. So,
So, so were you able then to, because my initial defensiveness
mhm,
was exactly the fashion thing.
mm,
Like, to me, I heard you were telling me that because I like to look pretty and I dress with, yesterday I wore yellow pants that are as yellow as my door. Like, I dress
and your microphone.
attractively and my microphone. I dress attractively. Being attractive matters to me. I wear makeup every day. I make
Mhm,
sure that my
mhm,
hair is nice every day. So that's where I felt the attack. It's like, you're
right.
telling me one more time, you're telling me that I am failing because that, like, what's wrong with you? You need to be worried about putting food in your cupboard because it's the end time. Whatever. I mean, I don't know.
Well, and we don't know, uh, and but we do. I mean, we know we've heard the things, right? And
Right.
and essentially that it doesn't matter, and we shouldn't be talking about it. There's so much more that's so much more important. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of trying to defend it or to
Right.
defend ourselves.
Right.
Um, I just think it is a valid conversation to talk about how you handle these kind of
Yeah,
things,
exactly.
and what we personally do, because all of us are getting it. Either our husbands are saying something, our children are saying
Mhm,
something, our parents are saying something,
mhm,
our coworkers, or people are
mhm,
saying things on the internet, or
mhm,
uh, church members are saying
mhm,
something to us
mhm,
about different things, and we've all experienced criticism in one way or another over the years. And
mm,
how we handle it, how do we navigate these times? And
mhm,
I think it's important, though, to talk about how you handle compliments as well.
mhm. I wish there I know there's a quote
Yes,
somewhere.
there is.
I don't know what it is, I can't remember, but it's like, don't take their criticisms and don't take their compliments either, because that gives them way too much power. I have no idea what it is, but I've heard it recently, and I feel silly for trying to quote something that I can't
Hang on,
remember
I'm
the
gonna try
name.
to find it, so keep
Okay.
talking about something else.
Great. Thanks. So when
How
I
did
was
it Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, when I was talking to Tim, about what we were gonna do this interview on, he's like, "Well, I just did a TikTok on criticism." I'm like, "Yes, you did. I saw that one." And really, John Gottman says in close relationships, we don't need to be criticizing. Like, criticism is a poison to a relationship. So there is something to be said for me personally, um, to make sure that I am not criticizing others, because that is not gonna build connection and relationship. Um, uh, and I mean, yeah, let me try to think of more words to say while you're looking.
No, I was thinking about what you were saying, so I'm having a hard time searching.
Yeah,
Um,
'cause it
oh, I just found
multitasking is not really a thing. We can really only do one thing at a time.
yeah, so
I wonder, you know what? I wonder if I could, if that whoever wrote that, what they're experiencing is valid.
yes.
So I wonder if it could be reworded in a different way. For example, that was a really difficult podcast for me to listen to,
Mm,
because I'm so focused on end times, and it really matters to me that we let people know that Jesus is coming soon. Um, and that like, that's super, super important to me, so it was really hard
mhm,
for me to listen to
mhm,
something about
mhm,
fashion,
mhm.
which totally puts the ownership on what their experience is.
Right,
Now, there is a little bit of like, if I was to hear that, that would probably put me in a little bit of a defensive mode as well. Um, because again, I have that shame filter, and so it's gonna come through that. However, it would very quickly go, well, I would be able to say, well, that's their experience, and they're allowed to have their experience, and I'm gonna let them have that,
right.
rather than trying to fight against it.
Correct.
You're thinking. You can see.
Yeah, uh, I yeah, I don't even know how to put words to it. There this whole concept, my nephew told me about, a quote. I was sharing this with him, the other day yesterday, and he shared a quote with me, and it was said something along these lines, and I haven't been able to find it
Mhm.
exactly, and if I
Mhm.
do find it, we will put it in the notes so you can find the actual author, but in essence, it was, "Don't let criticisms go to your heart
Yes.
or compliments to your head."
That's it. That's
Um,
it. Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I don't know, I find it I I find it, harder to do the one than the other. And I think it's based on our lives, right? And um how we navigate how we have navigated this world, or the things that we have experienced. This is not from him. This is a quote though from Lisa Turkhurst, who says, "Don't let people's compliments go to your head, and don't let their criticisms go to your heart." The degree But it was another philosopher that actually said it. The degree to which you do either of these things is the degree to which you'll be ruled by what other people think of you.
Yeah.
And that
Um,
is her quote, the full quote.
so I found it, Roy T. Bennett. Does that
That's it.
sound right?
Yeah.
"Do not let arrogance go to your head and despair to your heart. Do
Yeah.
not let compliments go to your head and criticisms to your heart. Do not let success go to your head and failure to your heart."
Yeah.
And that's the quote by Roy T. Bennett.
And when
So,
I
like,
say that Yes, thank you, Kim.
yeah.
When I say that one is easier to do than the other, it is easier for me to not let compliments go to my head,
Oh, interesting.
and it's harder for me
Mm.
to, not let criticisms go to my heart.
Well, I struggle with
So,
both,
mm,
which gives other people a whole lot of power.
yeah. Well, either way it does, you know? Either way it
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of, uh, Brené Brown, um,
Mhm.
when she talks about criticism and stuff, and the people who she talks about people who have the right to give you feedback,
Mhm. Mhm.
and her idea is you should. The people who have earned the right to speak into your life
Right. Right.
will fit on a 1 by 1 inch card.
Mm.
So really the people so and they earn that right with trust,
Mhm.
and trust has like a her teaching is trust has like 7 components to it.
Mhm.
So really, you and I and this is often what I do because I'm a huge Brené Brown fan. Read her books, love her research, think it's right on. I really take what she's found in her research. I really take it to heart, and I really try to apply it to my life. Um, and so a lot of times I'll go through, depending on how hurtful it is, I'll go through the 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 process of the feelings, and then
Mhm.
I say to myself, and they are not on my list.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I might still
Yeah.
feel hurt about it,
Right.
because hurt is hurt, and that's going to take some time. And I'm
Right.
going to tell myself, you're not on my list. You haven't earned the right to speak into my life, especially when you don't have a face that I'm. So it's actually easier, this person who I don't know, which I'm sure is a lovely person, and probably if we had a conversation at Lake Junaluska for camp meeting, because I'm assuming they're an Adventist, I would probably love that person. I would probably love
Right.
to know their story, and
Right.
because and that's what I've like, that's what I do. I go through that. You're not on my list, so I can't let you speak into my, like, I can't let that change me. It's gonna hurt me.
Right.
It's not gonna change me.
So I look at it, I at some point sitting on that couch came to
I
came to
just
the
have this I just have this image of you sitting on the couch, and this, like, your brain's just
Yes,
and
exactly what was that.
Charlie is just peacefully sleeping in your arms.
And just a picture of preciousness. Um, eh, yes, just to give you a little more story. So she was having a really rough day, and at one point she literally climbed up in my lap wanting to go to sleep. Like
Oh.
she just rubbing her eyes, the whole 9 yards, like wanting, and so then I tried to, like, put her in like the sleep position. Then she fights it, right? And
Oh,
she's
yes.
fussing and the whole 9 yards. And so I just was talking to her, and I start running my fingers
Oh,
like
yeah.
just around her face, and she stops, and she then starts smiling. When I get near her mouth, she opens her mouth, and then, and sticks out her tongue, and then I just keep running my fingers all around, like up the bridge of her nose and around her eyes and just all over her face, and I just keep doing it. And she ends up closing her eyes with her mouth wide open in a full-on smile
Oh,
and falls
that's
asleep with a smile on
wonderful.
her face. It was so precious. So
Yeah.
yes, I had that, and it was just so peaceful and beautiful and all of that. And and then all these other thoughts. And so, but I came to the understanding, which I think is similar to what you were talking about. I definitely thought about the concept of what people who really know us, both
Yeah.
of us,
Right.
um, where they would stand on this,
Yeah.
like in understanding this,
Yeah.
or understanding us and our
Mm.
hearts
Yeah,
and
exactly.
our,
Yeah.
our desire. Um, and then, so I did think of that. And I also always think that, and this has gotten me in trouble before, and so, I say it with a little bit of fear, but but I also have always tried to take either criticism or difficult times in general to say, "And how can I is there anything from this I can take away? Is
Yeah,
there
I
anything
think that's
from this that I
wise.
want to, you know, look at, and I want to, uh, you know, accept as something that I want to examine in my life more."
Yeah.
And I will say, though, that was about the time that I get the other text that came
Yeah.
in. And then since then, we had, I think, 3 other comments that were positive
Really?
comments about
Oh.
that particular podcast.
I'm
Eh
so glad, because what that tells me is that we accomplished what we set out to accomplish, Beth.
Hmm,
Because we wanted to give women permission or whatever.
yeah.
That I'm not saying that right, but to just, like, set them free to just be yourself. So we accomplished what we
And
set out
it
to.
and it's not, when it comes to that topic of fashion, it truly is, um it is something that is very individual as our personalities, and it should be.
Yeah,
and it
Exactly.
should be.
Exactly.
And, you know, you and I are going to one of the comments was, someone said that they, one of the good comments, that they had to go back and watch the intro to look at your outfit,
Oh my
and they said, "And it is not too much." It was so
Well,
sweet.
our precious Courtney also, said that to me,
Oh.
the gentleman who edits he actually texted me after that, after he was editing it, and said, "It's not too much at all."
Yeah.
But isn't
So
it silly? I mean, anyway, we don't need to go down that road, never mind.
but I think that it is important to take. But so I was thinking, okay, so what of this? Is there any part of this that I need to
Mhm.
examine more or hang on to or remember or whatever? And I will be honest, though it's kind of vulnerable for me to feel like to say this, is the answer for this one was no.
Yeah, I
And
I
and it
agree.
frankly was encouragement from some of the other comments, but then also having the conversation with the person closest to me in my life, my husband, who
Yeah,
knows me
right. Who has
through
the
and
right
through,
to
who
speak
has
to
the
your life.
right to
Yes,
speak into my life.
exactly.
And, it, and and that was really encouraging,
Mm,
and so I was able to like work through this
yeah.
and all the while sitting on the couch looking at that precious little angel and come to the conclusion that not that there was anything invalid about what she was saying, not that I need to defend
Mhm,
myself
mhm.
against what was said. Like you said, that is her experience, and
And she has a
we
story.
certainly don't want to waste her time
Mhm.
by
Oh,
any
no.
means, and so I'm sorry for that, and um but at the but that at this time, those aren't accurate or
Right,
criticisms that are something that I need to take on and that I need to examine.
right.
Listen, like I said earlier, there's nothing more precious than me than our Lord and Savior, and I do believe He's coming soon. And um, I, I think every single day. No, I know every single day that serving Him and walking through this life and trying to the best of my ability listen to the Holy Spirit as He guides and directs how we navigate this world, and how we reach out to people around us, and how we, minister as He has called us to do.
Mhm.
That in this situation, that even included having a conversation about fashion.
Yeah,
And
I couldn't help but, think about while you were describing Charlie in your arms.
mm,
So, let's say we get a compliment, a criticism or a compliment, and we go to Jesus and we
mhm,
say, I really just wanna rest in you. I don't want this to go to my head or go to my heart. I really wanna rest in you. So please hold me
mm,
so that I can rest in you. And then we are in his arms and we're just fighting it and fighting it and fighting it because the compliment is going to our head. And we're fighting it because we know that that's not where we come from. We know that resting in him is what we need to do. Or we're fighting that criticism because it hurts so badly. And Jesus is just running his finger all around our little face. And he's soothing us and he's calming us. And in time, because of who he is and the comfort that he brings, with our mouth open, we
and
close our eyes in a
rest.
blissful smile
Yeah.
of rest. Is that
Yep.
not, is that, was Charlie not the perfect thing? And I don't like that word.
You hate it.
And it
Yeah.
is actually
Yeah.
valid here. It
Yeah.
is she is the perfect example of what we need to do, whether it's a compliment or a criticism or anything else. Just rest in the arms of Jesus.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Kim. And it's true for everything.
true. Everything. Everything.
When you're in the midst of the greatest joy and
Yes.
when you're in the deepest of weeds, which it may not even be criticism for you today, right? But
Right.
whatever the greatest,
Could be
deepest, ugliest weeds
loss.
are.
It could be it could be anything. It could be grief, it could be shame, it could be fear, it could be anything.
That's right.
It could be joy. It could be
Yeah.
peace.
Yeah.
It could be faithfulness. It could be all of it. Whatever
Yeah.
it is, the
Yep.
best place for us to be is in the arms
Yep.
of Jesus. And I made you cry.
Oh,
So
my
sorry.
word, did you make me cry?
Charlie's fault.
I'm trying not to, do the whole snot
Sniffle.
sound on the microphone, but that's proving to be difficult. No, thank you, Kim. That was beautiful.
That
I
actually
appreciate that.
that me even just saying it out loud, I can actually feel the calm
Yeah.
in the center of my chest where that pinch was, where that
Yeah.
sharpness was. I
Yeah.
now feel it release. I feel the release of it.
Yep, for
J
sure. And I'm
mm,
telling you that exactly what you were just describing with Charlie and about
mhm,
the letting go of the
yeah,
pinch,
yeah, yeah.
that is what he does
That is what he does
every single day. That is the mercies being new every morning.
every morning.
You
Yeah,
know, that is, I will never leave you or forsake you. I'm
yeah,
always right there with you.
yeah.
And, that is, yeah,
The
that
height
is
and
him.
depth and width and there's a fourth one, breadth of the
Yeah.
love of God poured out to us. And if we could just know it, we would be filled with the fullness of God. That's because I read Ephesians this morning. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So I can't help it. In these end times, I'm gonna
Yes.
put on my best clothes and I'm gonna crawl into the lap of Jesus.
Amen.
Because it all matters. She's not wrong. I'm assuming it's a she.
Yeah.
She's not wrong. The end times do matter. And our hearts do matter. And getting our hearts linked up with Jesus and so close does matter. And so does walking in this life, letting ourselves be who we are, clothed in Christ on the inside, and clothed with a little bling on the outside if that's what we want.
And when you mean bling, it can be even just
Anything.
yellow pants.
It could be yellow and they were yellow pants.
Yes. Yes. And mm, you know, I truly, truly know without a shadow of a doubt that sometimes we are or some of us are more sober minded than others.
Yeah.
Some of us are more creative than
Okay.
others.
Yeah.
Some of us are more intellectual than others. And I'm not saying I'm not and we're just all such unique and um beautiful individuals, right? That are navigating this life.
Yeah.
And I am so convicted that
Mm,
that means that it is going to be we're each going to have unique and individual experiences,
yeah.
and
And
that ultimately from the beginning the only thing that really matters is we navigate those with Christ, and that he is um, part of our lives, and he will guide and direct us. And I think all we ever wanted to accomplish with that podcast or any podcast that we have ever put out here is we want people to know him more and to feel the freedom
freedom,
to serve him
freedom.
and to
Yes.
live with him,
Yes.
how he is guiding and directing them
Yeah.
without shame and without fear and without um,
Yeah.
but knowing and trusting that he will guide and direct them. And whatever that looks like, please, um, go and be his child boldly.
How he made you.
How he made you.
Yeah, how he made you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. In the last 24 hours, what has brought you joy, laughter, or a smile, or all three?
I told you that I felt very convicted many, many years ago that I needed to be more intentional and better at making friends outside of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Mhm.
And since we've been here, we've been working very hard on that, and it's been going very well, and I'm so thankful. And we can honestly say we have a couple couples that we're friends with.
Oh, that's so great.
So we had planned to do something with one of the couples this coming Saturday night, and then they realized they had double booked themselves.
Oops.
And so they said, "Oh, we're so sorry, but how about you come to dinner with us on Thursday? We're going with some other friends."
Oh.
And my first reaction was, "Oh, I don't, we don't need to impose upon you and your other friends." And then I thought, "No, it was like they didn't have to offer that, right?"
Right,
And we're
exactly.
trying to make
Exactly.
like a broader
Right.
swath of
Yes,
connections
yes.
with people. And so we accepted their invitation, and last night
Mm.
we drove together with them and we went to a wonderful restaurant in downtown Saluda, North Carolina. And we sat outside on the patio, and they have lights out there, and it just absolutely perfect weather and
Mm.
flowers around, and the conversation was uplifting and important and
Mm.
enjoyable, and there was lots of laughter, and it just was an
Mm.
absolutely beautiful evening. And I'm just felt very thankful that I hadn't, you know, said no
Yeah.
to that
Yeah.
other possibility. So anyway, yeah, great
That's
joy.
great.
Great joy.
That's so good. That's so good.
Laughter and smile, all of them.
All of it. Um, this morning, I, was doing my Bible reading in on our front porch because the sun was way too high for me to be in the back, and it was too hot. So I was sitting there and I'm reading, eating my breakfast, and I'm reading Ephesians, and then this swallow
Mm.
comes, and she comes under the porch, and she looks to see if she can build a nest. And, like, I was just there and just watching her, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. And then in my prayer, I was like, "Jesus, please help her to figure out how to put her nest there because that would be the coolest thing." And then I looked at my, shutters that are now all teal, and I thought about how every time I drive home, it brings me such joy because I've got this fantastic yellow door and these gorgeous teal shutters, and it just makes my house so happy.
We need a picture so
Oh,
we can
yes.
put it up
I will
on.
I will go out and when is this gonna drop? In 2 weeks or
Yeah, yes,
okay, so
2
I will
weeks
go
from
out this
today.
morning. I will go take a picture, and I will post a picture today on the Joy in the Weeds on Instagram so that you all can
Good.
see my yellow door and my teal shutters that make my house very happy.
I love that.
So
That's
good.
so good.
It's so good. Every time I drive home, I just like, I love it.
I love that you have a yellow door and a yellow microphone
Yes,
and
and
yellow
yellow
pants.
pants.
Oh,
Oh
Kim,
goodness.
it's always such a joy to have
It is.
conversation with you. I really
Yes.
wish we were closer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in a few weeks, we'll be able to hang out some.
Yes, we need to.
Yeah.
So that would be wonderful. Well, hey, if you are out there listening to this, I hope that this has brought you more joy than weeds.
Yeah, and remember, compliments, criticisms, whatever it is, just rest in the arms of Jesus because he just loves you. That's all that matters.
Amen with that. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We would really love to hear from you. So please find us. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Just search for Joy in the Weeds. You can also email us. Our email address is joy@carolinasda.org. That's joy@carolinasda.org. Now, we hope that today, as you navigate the weeds, you will also hold on to moments of joy. This podcast is a production of the Carolina Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.